My honest thoughts about The Court Dancer by Shin Yong-shin. I think that it was an okay book. I mean, I loved some characters, I loved some relationships, but most of the time I was just like, meh. For example, when Jin experienced a miscarriage, Shin chooses not to go into it, which I understand for timing's sake, but at the same time, it robbed us of a lot of context. It made me unsure about what was happening until it was officially said. But another thing I didn't like about it is that I hated the character of Victor. I feel like there was no likable parts about him. He was just a lovesick French dignitary in the state of Korea who had a fascination about about everything Asian, and literally nothing else. He was just there. He was the main love interest, but he was there. He affected nothing. If you had taken him out of the plot, you could have found another way for Jin to get to France. It did not matter. But a relationship I did like, though, was Jin and the Queen. I feel like their relationship was perfect. It was the perfect jealous mentor relationship. The Queen was jealous of Jin, but she also loved Jin very deeply. And you can tell this about why she sent Jin to France instead of just keeping her locked up away from her. At the end of the day, she wanted Jin to go. She wanted her to explore. She wanted Jin to have her own life and not be just a court dancer. And Jin just wanted the Queen to love her in return. And that was the most beautiful thing. And you could tell that Jin has such love for the Queen when she still writes the Queen's letters every day. And instead of signing your servant, she just eventually signs Jin because she understands that there is no longer a serviceship, no longer a mentorship in that relationship. And that was just heartbreaking. A plot that I wish they had gotten more into was what was happening between the Queen and the Prince Regent, because I feel like it was mentioned very briefly, and it's an important part of the book, but she never fully explained the context behind it, or how would you know if it was a fight? For all they know, it could have been a family court thing, or it was a massive war, which is what it was. Another thing that I liked about the book, however, was Yoon. I feel the character of Yoon was very well done. He was strong, he was resilient, and he had a weak exterior but a caring heart and was very tough and brave. Like how we would play in the court and he stood up for Jin. That is the hardest thing I think ever was to read how they tortured Yoon because of Jin. Jin. His blah. Jin is just a blah person. I cannot have any feelings about her. Like, she could never pick a side. She was either totally in love with Korea and miss the Queen, and then other times she'd be like, F Korea, I live in France, I want to be Western. She never picked a side. Her identity struggle was never truly shown. I felt like it would have been nice to have a chapter with Jin just trying to figure out who she is now. Because she was a court dancer, a peasant. She has gone from being a simple peasant to being under the mentorship of Lady Shu, to be the Queen's beloved servant, to being shunned by the Queen, to going to the French orphanage, to going to loving Victor in France, to come back to Korea, to go back to the French orphanage. It's so confusing, and I wish they would have shown like part of her self-reflection of being like, who am I as a person? One thing I would have wished more also in this book is if we had included Shu more into it, her being her mother, about being like, I wish I could have seen Shu's reaction to Jin's being sent to Paris, because we just see her letters and we just see, we'll miss you, but we never actually see the devastation that Shu would probably feel knowing that Jin was going to be away. She raised Jin since she was a baby, since her mother died in childbirth, which is a plot that they never talk about after the first chapter, so that's another thing to add on the list. But Shu just wanted the best for her daughter, and she just left, and we never saw her reaction, and that was terrible. Anyway, if I had to rate it out of 5 stars, I'm going to give it 3. I wasn't particularly moved by it, but it was a nice read to read. And it wasn't the worst thing for what you did to have not be able to pick the book itself. A short history about the Empress Min from the court dancer. She was a real person, and she was married to the 26th king of Korea, King Gojun. She lived during the time of Meiji Japan, and Japan at the time wanted to take over Korea. Unfortunately for them, Empress Min was a woman full of beliefs of Western ties would better the country, and she was strong, and she wasn't going to go down easily. Unfortunately for Empress Min, however, on October 8, 1895, she met her death by assassination by the Japanese government. The Japanese government in turn took over Korea in the palace, and they initiated the Short Hair Act, where all men had to cut off their hair. This was a huge blow for Korea because their way of honor was their hair. And in 1896, the king and the prince fled. In 1897, King Gojun took back over Korea and established it an empire, and established her Empress Min, or Empress Mei Ying-song, the Great Empress.
I really cannot mess up this dance. Just move. Fluid movement. I need to win back the queen's favor. I really hope that she doesn't hate me. I don't know what I did, but I promise I'll be good. Oh my gosh, she is so hot. I wanna know what love is. Dang, she be good. She be dancing and she's fine as hell. I just wanna go home. Is she trying to steal my husband? Like, what the hell?